Hello, welcome to video 21 of the Negotiating Your Next Home video series. I'm Eric Hutchinson. I'm the principal broker and owner of Hutchinson Realty. I hope you'll watch the other videos in the series, especially the one right before this one, because this is just a continuation of our discussion of the new construction contract. With new construction in high gear in Northwest Arkansas right now, because of our lack of inventories and because of the high growth area, new construction is prevalent. It is all over the place and it is growing in leaps and bounds. And so it's highly likely that if you're looking for a home, that new construction may be an option for you. The new construction contract has 14 pages. The resale contract only has 12. And so there's some major differences that we need to talk about and you need to know when negotiating your home with a builder. So let's get into it, shall we? So we're going to start on page 4 because that's where we left off last time in the last video. So please go back and review that. Just for a quick review, item number 10, plans and specifications, are the things that the builder is going to put into the house. So if the house is already complete, the plans and specs are just pretty much irrelevant because you can see everything that's in the house. However, if the house is in the middle of the construction phase, or if it hasn't even started yet, you don't know what materials the builder is going to put in the property. Are they going to put hardwood floors in, or are they going to put in laminate floors? Are they going to put in granite countertops, or are they going to put in Formica? What kind of cabinets are they going to put in? That's all part of the plans and specs. And so it's really important, if the property is not completed yet, that the buyer agree to the plans and specs, and make sure that you see those plans and specs if you are the buyer on a new construction home, because you want to know everything that's going into this property that you're purchasing. So let's go to number 11, additions and or changes. And so if you check letter A, then like I said, you just move on to item number 12 because the house is already complete. But we're going to assume that the house is not complete yet or hasn't even begun. So we're going to look at item number B, which says buyer and seller agree to handle additions and or changes as follows. The reason why this is even in the new construction contract is because buyers sometimes get into the process and decide that they want an upgrade or something different in the property. So how do you handle that? How does payment for that happen? So number 1, under 1I, payment, it says only items agreed to in the plans and specs will be paid for by buyer. Now that's easy, but sometimes not very realistic. So if the house is just beginning, it's highly likely the buyer is going to make some changes or some adjustments. And so probably wouldn't be 1 if the house hasn't even begun yet. If the house is almost complete, then you might check number 1. Number 2 says all additions or changes to plans and specifications will be paid for by buyer upon agreement to their installation, and all money tendered will be considered additional non-refundable deposit. For instance, let's say the builder had intended to put laminate in the house and got into the process. The buyer goes, I think I would like to have some hardwood floors instead of laminate. We want some real hardwood floors. We just like the way that looks better. And the builder goes, great, but that's going to be a $3,000 upgrade. So the buyer would write a check to the builder. If we check this item right then, pay it to the builder, get a receipt, of course, but then the builder has the money to go get the materials and put them in. If the buyer backs out of the deal, they do not get a refund. It's considered a non-refundable deposit. Now look at number 3. All additions and or changes to plans and specifications will be paid for by buyer or credit given to buyer at closing. Now this is good for the buyer, but not so good for the builder, and most builders are not going to agree to this. This would be that the buyer would ask for an upgrade, the builder would do it, and then at closing, whenever we get to closing, the buyer would actually credit that to the builder out of the buyer's money. But that puts the builder at risk because that means he's upgrading the property at his own expense, and if the buyer backs out, then he's stuck holding the bag. Now look at 2I, method of agreement. Now, I've got number 1 checked. It says only written agreements for additions or changes will be allowed to be changed to the buyer. Now, if I represent the buyer, I'm always going to recommend number 1. And I would recommend that you have your realtor check this number 1 because only those things that are in writing can be upheld by law. In other words, if you say verbally, hey, I'd like to have this, and the builder says verbally back, yeah, I'll do that, and then he doesn't do it or he doesn't do it right, you've got no proof. It's just your word against his, and you would need to have proof that you asked him to do something. So I will say, number one, only written agreements is what you want in any negotiations with resale home or with a new construction. You always want it in writing because you can prove what was done. Number two says written and verbal agreements, but I would not recommend that. So let's go and look down further on item number 12 on page 4, and that says stage of construction and completion. Now, again, if the house is already completed, then you're going to check A and you just move on to the next item. However, we're assuming here for our example that the house is in process or hasn't even been started yet. So if you check letter B, it says the construction is in process and the seller anticipates that the completion of the property or the house to be on or before, and then it gives you a date in there. Now, if the house is almost done, or even if it's halfway through the process, the builder can give you a pretty good end date. A drop dead date is what we call it, where that is exactly when the house is going to close, and they can estimate that pretty good. However, if the property or the construction has not even begun yet, then it starts to get a little bit muddy. It gets a little bit hard to predict exactly when it's going to be. The builder can tell you if he's built other houses that it's going to be approximately 6 months or 8 months or 9 months. He can give you a little bit of a heads up there, but that's why there are two dates here. I've got March 31st here, 2022, and then I've got a May 31st, 2022, and that's the actual drop dead date, that if it doesn't happen, then we either terminate this deal or figure out something else, do an addendum to change those dates. But I will tell you that it's really difficult for the builder. So I give him a little bit of grace here because he's got all kinds of things that could come up, like contractors, whether they show up, whether they don't show up. The weather can cause all kinds of problems. And so anyway, you notice down there on the drop dead date, it says if B or C is selected, buyer and seller acknowledge that any unforeseen delays such as problems with the weather, extreme acts of nature, acts of arbitration, failure of any subcontractors or material supplier, fires, strikes, legal acts of public authority, circumstances beyond seller's control, and any change order that would require additional time to complete as specified in paragraph 11 will not void this real estate contract. And then it says, notwithstanding the unforeseen delays mentioned above, construction must be completed no later than, and then the drop dead date is May 31st, 2022. So you want to make sure that there's a big enough gap there so that if there are delays, that you don't have to redo the contract or do an addendum. So I always try to put a couple months in there just to give the builder some grace and time to do that, because it always seems like it gets delayed. So let's move over to page 5, and I'm not going to go over item 13 because that's just the title requirements, and it's the same paragraph that's in the residential resale contract. But I do want to go over this little warning box, and you notice that it's in bold letters. It says, notice to buyer. Any vendor, supplier, subcontractor, or laborer who is involved in supplying materials, fixtures, or services to improve the property is entitled to a materials or mechanics lien against the property if not paid in full. Now, this is where it could get a little bit scary for a buyer, because if the builder has contractors working on the house during this process, it's up to him to pay those contractors. And sometimes there's a delay in the builder paying the contractors. If the delay goes beyond the closing date and the contractor thinks he's not going to get paid, he can file a lien against your new home, because now it's your home after closing, and now the lien is against the property, and it becomes really sticky. So you want to kind of make sure that the builder is paying his contractors, and sometimes it's just the reputation of the builder. If he's been building a really long time and he's got a good reputation, you're probably good, and you can always ask for receipts. But there could be a contractor that you didn't know about, a painter, someone who just runs errands for him. Anybody that he pays could potentially do a lien against the property, and that is a little bit scary. So, and then it says, notice to buyer and seller that the Arkansas General Assembly passed Act 454 of 2009. And that just basically means that the contractors have a right to do a lien. And if you question that, you really need to talk to an attorney, because realtors aren't attorneys and we cannot give you legal advice. So that's all I think we're going to cover today. I hope this has been informative to you. We'll probably do one more video on the new construction contract, and I'll try to cover the rest of the items, but hope this has been informative. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me at info@hutchrealty.com. You can visit our website where we have new construction houses on our website, and that's at hutchrealty.com, where you can view every listing in Northwest Arkansas. And if you're a seller, you can get a free home evaluation by just clicking on our home evaluation tool. So I hope this information's been good, and I hope you have a blessed day.